A very warm welcome to the second in our Global Health Show series. I'm Liz Gunn, and today we discuss the new science of epigenetics with former Stanford medical professor Dr. Bruce Lipton, who explains that we can become masters rather than victims of our genes. We then hear from Vivienne Berry, who discusses how to create maximum well-being through balancing the brain with the heart and the gut for that crucial dance of creativity and courage and compassion. And then we talk adrenal health with the best-selling author, researcher and physician, Dr. James Wilson. If you're feeling tired all the time, this interview is not to be missed. He'll show you how to combat tiredness and those constant repetitive colds that go with it, and how to thrive. But let's now continue our discussion with Bruce Lipton, which we recorded earlier. Bruce, when we were last talking to you, we were talking about the freedom of empowerment through information and what that does on a planetary level and on an individual level. Tell me a bit more about that.
Well, the concept of the new science, epigenetics, is a revolution, and it's a revolution for this. The old science, genetic control, which is what everybody's been programmed with, the genes are making decisions and genes are giving cancer and genes are causing diseases, gives the emphasis to the genes as if they were self-actualizing, meaning a gene turned on and made a decision. And we all buy that and we go, oh my God, the genes are controlling me. The new science reveals this is totally false. The whole belief that genes are active causative agents is totally false. The concept that there's a cancer gene. There is no cancer gene. There is no gene that causes cancer. And you say, well, wait, our whole science has emphasized the genes. I go, well, this is what the new science, epigenetics, is about. You say, well, genetics, epigenetics, it sounds the same to me. And I go, well, no, it's a revolution in this regard. When I say genetic control, the conventional wisdom, which is wrong, means control by genes. Genes turn on, genes turn off, and genes regulate. I say, what about epigenetics? I go, well, epi means above. So when I say epigenetic control, it literally says control above the genes. And all of a sudden I said, wait, what do you mean control above the genes? Well, simple point. A gene is a blueprint. It's nothing more than just a glorified blueprint to make proteins, which are the building blocks of the body. 100,000 different proteins. And so a gene is a blueprint to make these different 100,000 different building blocks.
So there you agree with science. You both agree it's a blueprint.
It's a blueprint to make
It's a starting block.
But now comes the interesting part, because most people say, oh, well, a gene turns on and a gene turns off. And I go, well, consider it this way. You go into an architect's office, she's working on a blueprint, you lean over her shoulder and you say, is your blueprint on or off? And of course she looks at you like, well, what are you talking about? It's a blueprint, there's no on and off. And I go, precisely. A gene is a blueprint. It has no on and off. But it could be read. Well, all of a sudden I say, well, if you're reading a blueprint, who is reading the blueprint? The blueprint is not reading itself. And all of a sudden it says, oh, there's some other level of control, and it's above the genes, okay? And now what we recognize is this. It's environment, information picked up by an organism, and then the organism adjusts its biology to fit in the environment, automatically controlled by the environment. I mean, the simplest one is this. It's cold outside. You walk outside, nervous system feels it's cold. Its function is to do what? Activate the system to create warmer body, increase the metabolic activity, warm up the body.
You start shivering.
Keep you at the right temperature.
Yeah.
I say, the nervous system didn't control that. The temperature outside controlled that. I say, you go out in the summertime, completely different response. The warmth picked up by the nervous system causes the body to cool itself down, releasing perspiration, cooling off. Again, so my biology in that level is not controlled by genes, it's controlled how I respond to the environment. Well, it turns out virtually every aspect of our biology is controlled by reading the environment. And all of a sudden then it says, well, then the genes are not self-actualizing. No, the genes are engaged in response to the environment.
Okay, I want to take an example now that many people will be familiar with, and that is Angelina Jolie. So an extraordinary broadcast from you just after she had both breasts removed because of fear that her mother's cancer would come through to her genetically.
Right.
So what's another way of looking at that?
Well, the idea is, let's look at how she came to the conclusion why I need a mastectomy. She said, oh, my mother had breast cancer, my grandmother had breast cancer, an aunt had breast cancer, and they all died. I have the breast cancer gene. Therefore, I'm next in line. I'm going to die. Why? Well, look at the family. When anybody's got it, they died. And then all of a sudden she says, well, I've got the gene. So since it causes breast cancer, if I remove my breast, I will avoid the problem. I go, well, that's really cool, except for this. The breast cancer gene, especially when she has BRCA1, does not cause breast cancer at all. And I'll give you a very important fact. Only 50% of the women that have the breast cancer gene ever get the cancer. Well, there's a very important fact. It says, wait, 50% of the women have this gene and don't get a cancer. The first thing is this, well, obviously the gene didn't cause cancer because 50% of the women don't get the cancer. So having the gene itself is not the cause of the cancer. It's information above the gene. It's how you live, the stress levels, your fears, how you respond to life. This is what controls the genes.
Are you saying the fear of seeing her mother die, of seeing these relatives die, could in itself create within her body that condition?
100%, and it could kill her faster. Because fear, and people don't understand this, fear is the primary cause of illness on this planet. Up to 90% of doctor visits on this planet are due to stress. Well, what is stress? Stress means I'm in an environment or a situation I have no control over, I fear is going to threaten me. And so let's just resolve 90% of illness problems on the planet right now with this.
See, John, what I love about your practice is you look at the whole person, the whole body, and yet we were brought up in an almost mechanical age, as if the body's a machine and all the parts are separate.
Well, we're in a quantum age now, an information age, so we can recalibrate, so we can convert fear into love, for example. But there's a process to that, and the average person's going to take time to work through it. Yeah. And that's what I love about Bruce's last book, called The Honeymoon Effect, because Jesus and Buddha taught about love and the health benefits of love, and Bruce is taking it from a slightly different direction in a different form of science.
Well, if we're talking about that, talk about the heart to me, Bruce. Tell me the place of the heart and how we do that, where we're offended, hurt, scared.
Let's get to the very basics. You want to really get to the basics. The idea is when you talk heart, everyone goes, oh, pump, pushes blood around. I go, well, that is a job of the heart, but that's not the only job of the heart. There's a more important job of the heart. It's a sensory mechanism. It reads vibrational energy. And the nerves that go to the heart from the brain, the vagus nerve, more of the nerves in the vagus nerve are taking information from the heart and sending it to the brain than there are nerves taking information from the brain, sending it to the heart. So the heart is a source of sensory information. I said, well, what's it reading? Vibration. He goes, so what's the relevance of vibration? Energy, okay? And the answer is this. When you understand quantum physics, everything in the world is energy. Even matter is giving off energy. And I say, so what's the big deal about energy? And here's a simple point. Energy is life. You have energy, you got life. You got no energy, you got no life. So every organism, from the most primitive organism to the most advanced organism on this planet, has been designed to read the energy. Why? It's a gauge to say, if my energy is going down, that means I'm losing my vitality. If my energy is going up, I'm gaining vitality. So an organism has a device, the heart, which will read the energy of the field. And the relevance is this. When we make decisions, we should be using our vibration as the monitor. We have a tendency to use our brain to make rational decisions. I go, well, that's a very difficult way of reading it because the energy is the clearest thing. Are you getting more energy from doing this or going there than if you did that and went there? And why is it relevant? Where you go is you go toward the energy. Okay, now all of a sudden we're sounding like so new agey, but let's add some words to this because people have experienced energy, but they didn't know it, yet they refer to it as what? Good vibes, bad vibes. I go, yes, everyone experiences that. Good vibes is like, oh, I'm in a place and all of a sudden I have more energy than I had before. I'm very excited. I got more energy, more life. What does it mean? The environment you're in has energy that supports your energy, so the two come together, you get more energy, good vibes.
This is why we love falling in love. We love jobs that fulfill our need.
Because they give us vitality.
Yes.
But then I say, what about bad vibes? I say, well, look, you've probably been someplace, let's say in a dark night in a city, you don't know where you are, and you're walking, and all of a sudden you feel like your energy has disappeared. You feel vulnerable, weak, frail. Why? The energy is disappearing. It's called bad vibes. I say, what does that represent? It says, in this environment, you're not being supported. Your life is not being supported because it's taking away your energy. The most primitive organism just reads good vibes, bad vibes. Good vibes, I'm going that way. Bad vibes, I'm not going that way. And basically, the whole plan of life is really based on reading the energy. If we would do the same we'd be as successful as the most primitive organisms in doing that.
Let's talk in future programs, Bruce, about how we can do that more, how we can touch
it's very important. It's the secret language that all organisms have, and the one that we don't even acknowledge.
It's fascinating. Thank you, Bruce Lipton. So joining me now is Vivienne Berry. Welcome, Vivienne. I just actually want to throw the first question to you, though, John. When you first met Vivienne, what made you think this woman would be great in the global health clinic that I'm running?
Well, Vivienne and I go back a long way, so before we worked together, I actually trained with Vivienne in NLP 10 or so years ago, and I knew her qualities from there and earlier. But the new sciences that are coming through, integrating the heart math and also the aspects of the gut to the brain, and what Vivienne's done recently is she's very highly trained, internationally trained in MBIT.
What exactly is that, the multiple brain?
Yeah, MBIT, multiple brain integration techniques. It's wonderful. It's a new modality. It's just 3 years old. Interesting enough, it's come out of Australia. Two old mates of mine, Grant Susalu and Marvin Oka, began looking at all the research that was coming out around the heart and the gut because of what's been happening with health in the world. And they've done a magnificent piece of integration. So multiple brain integration technique is a bit like ancient wisdom meets modern neuroscience. And scientists now have proved what ancient wisdom has always said, is that there's multiple brains. Multiple
Within the body, we have more than one brain.
That's correct. So they've proved now that the heart is not just a pump, it's actually a brain. It's an intelligence all of its own. And the gut is a brain. It's an intelligence all of its own. So the scientists have proven that there's criteria that determine what makes a brain, and the heart and the gut, as well as the head, fulfill that criteria.
Can you give me an example of what might make the heart?
I'm not a scientist, but it's stuff like neurons. So we've got neurons in the heart and the gut, they form neural pathways, neural nets. We've got things like glial cells, and we've got things like neurotransmitters. And the neurotransmitters allow these brains, these intelligences to communicate. So they are able to store information, retrieve information, so they have memory. So basically they make decisions. But the most exciting thing about these three brains is that they have neuroplasticity. And that means, in layman's terms, is that they can reprogram themselves. So if somebody's had a trauma in the heart, and they've got, I can't trust the world, I can't trust people, I'm shutting down my heart, they can now actually heal that heart, regrow new neurons, reprogram the heart that they can open up and that they can trust again. And similarly with the gut brain, when people have had gut brain issues, digestive issues, a lot of the autoimmune system function, because the gut brain controls 70% of the autoimmune of your immune system. So
this is part of why this whole probiotics thing, looking after our stomach, but there's this deep emotional link with, let's take the stomach brain.
Absolutely.
That is often where people say, oh, I'm feeling tense, I can't eat, my tummy's in an uproar. We are literally, tell us about what's going on then when I say something like that.
Yes, because that's a good point. These three brains each have different prime functions and different competencies. So let's talk about the gut brain for a moment. The gut brain runs our self-preservation. So this is where our fight, flight, freeze syndrome comes in, through the gut brain. It also runs our core identity. Now, not what the ego thinks, but what we viscerally think at our core about ourselves.
Give me an example of a client, a difference in that.
I'm not safe, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve.
Even though on the outside we're putting on a confident show and hello, I'm so happy to meet you, inside that gut brain there's a conflict.
Yes.
Wow.
And the gut brain also runs motility, so that's our ability to move forward. So when we're feeling stuck and we can't move, this is gut brain. Gut brain controls boundaries, controls motivation.
The thing about this, Vivienne, is it's three-dimensional, isn't it? It's working on so many levels at once. It can work on just purely physical. We might have a physical ailment that shows up as not moving forward. But it might be a psychological not moving forward.
Absolutely. No, there will never be a complete healing until the mind, the body, the emotional body, and the soul, the spirit, align. We're not just going to get it just through the physical. That's the beginning, but we need the whole lot aligned. And this technology, this is absolutely brilliant. And I've spent a lot of time and money over the last couple of years upskilling. It's the most brilliant piece of integration that's come out. And it's really providing this integration. As a human, we're not going to have full success in whatever we decide to do unless these three brains are collaborating and working with each other.
And in so many people, they're working against the person themselves.
Yeah, you can have your gut brain working against your heart, your head brain taking over and not even allowing the heart or the gut brain to function. And the heart is so important. The heart controls our values, so what we most value in life, what we're trying to create, and our passion. So if you've got issues that you just haven't got any passion for life, this is a heart brain issue. It also controls our emotions.
And our ability to reach out.
And a lot of people, when they've had something negative happen, I don't want to feel. So they start suppressing emotions. The thing, though, with the heart, you can't be selective on what emotion you suppress. So if you start suppressing your painful emotions, you also suppress your joy and your happiness.
And your production of serotonin.
It's correct. So we have to, and the oxytocin and the bonding that comes from the heart, because the other part of the heart is your relational effect, how you connect with people. So it's important for the oxytocin. So we need to heal our heart.
Now, wait a minute, Vivienne. If we need to feel the emotions we don't like, or John, you might help with this, we're going to need a lot of courage, because a lot of people shy away from the ones they don't like, and they just reach out for the ones they like. How do we do that? What part of the body is that in?
It's interesting, actually, courage comes from the gut brain.
From here?
So fear sits in the front, courage is in the spine. And always in the human condition we have fear. However, we have to grab our courage and push it through fear. And then anybody who overcomes anything, that is what they actually do.
How do you help people? What's the work you do with people to help them find these
Well, I do
freedoms?
work with them I teach them how to communicate with these three brains. And the first thing we have to do in order to do that, we have to balance the autonomic nervous system, because most people are what we call sympathetic dominant. They're running out of the sympathetic nervous system. They're in stress.
Fight or flight.
And they're living in an adrenal and cortisol chemical cocktail, if you like. So we need to balance it up. We need to get the parasympathetic working, which makes the serotonin and the dopamine.
So beautifully calming.
Our happy chemicals, yes. So the first thing we do, we have to teach them how to balance that up. And HeartMath have done fabulous research work over 25 years and got some wonderful biofeedback.
I think what we might do is take another session of discussing with you HeartMath and the implications of that. But this one has been so enlightening and so informing, and this is real cutting edge, new frontier science. Yeah. Thank you, Vivienne Berry. And joining us now on Skype from Tucson, Arizona is Dr. James Wilson. This book, Adrenal Fatigue, the 21st Century Syndrome, has really, in the last 3 weeks, become my Bible. And it's changing how I feel very much. Why are the adrenals, James, so essential to good health? Explain how they work.
Well, the adrenals are the glands of stress. That was told by Dr. Hans Selye back as early as 1930. And so we're under such a stress in our societies that we have multiple stresses, things we're aware of, stresses we're not aware of, and we simply try to plow through and we take on more and more and more stresses. And society even encourages us to take on more and more stresses to where it just is a straw that breaks the camel's back. One more stress, one accident, one more thing, and the adrenals happen to go down. Because they're the glands of stress, they have to try to balance all the stresses, internal, external, thermal, chemical, emotional, psychological, physical, that your body endures. And so it's just too much for some people and the adrenals start to go downhill rapidly.
And a lot of people are not even aware of where the adrenals are in the body or what they look like. You described them as little pyramids sitting right on top of the kidneys.
Yeah, they're two little glands that sit right over the kidneys, about the size of a large grape.
And yet they control so many of our hormonal reactions. How did you come to this work? How did you come to realize how crucial they are when in fact modern medicine is not really acknowledging what a crucial part they play?
Well, let me make a division between modern medicine and research. Research certainly is recognizing the problem with the adrenals and stress. That's very well established. It's the medicine, the medical part, the active clinical medicine that's not recognizing this importance. How I came about it is my patients taught me. My patients come in, and I had one or two key patients who came into me early in my practice, and I did not know what to do with them. So I searched and searched and searched, and finally discovered it might possibly be their adrenal glands. And then when I started treating their adrenal glands the best way I knew how, then they started to recover. And it was just really revealing to me and so interesting that I became, I would say a semi-expert in trying to help these people under stress recover and get their life back.
And for many of those people, they've gone through a number of different so-called specialists who have, for some, told them they have even psychological problems. They're imagining that they are chronically tired. Is that something that's often shown up in your practice, people desperate after being told it's their problem?
It's so sad. I wish you could have been a mouse in the corner and listened to what they told me. They'd been to as many as 37 doctors. I had a woman who'd been to 37 doctors. Often they've been to 15 or 20, and they've been told the most ridiculous things. It's a psychological problem. You're getting older. What do you expect? It's part of being a woman. Here's a tranquilizer. Here's a prescription for sleeping. Here's an antidepressant. I've got sick people to treat. Get out of my office. You're a hypochondriac. It was just insulting how those poor people had to endure the uneducated ignorance that their doctors spit back at them when they told them what they were suffering from.
And take those cases, James, when you got them on the program that you have for adrenal support, did you see big shifts pretty quickly in those sorts of cases?
If they're going to also change their lifestyle and make the dietary changes, then usually within 3 to 6 weeks, we would see recovery start to happen. Now, that doesn't mean they would be totally rehabilitated. It means they were properly supported to where the dietary supplements were making the difference of the dietary changes and the sleeping habits, the lifestyles, were all working together to help these people get their life back. And we've had them as sick as having to be carried from their bedroom to the bathroom by their father, 43-year-old woman I'm thinking of, a physician. And she's back to being totally rehabilitated. A woman in New Zealand who couldn't dress herself. And her husband cried when she was on the phone one day with him and told him she had been able to dress herself that day. 2 years later, she climbed Machu Picchu. So as sick as they are, they can usually get better, and usually it doesn't involve pharmaceuticals.
And this applies across the board. We're not just talking women who find having babies or looking after young children or having their menstruation improves because of the adrenal and thyroid support that involves. But it also applies to professionals in business, doesn't it, who are exhausted, and even young people. Even my son at 18 is responding incredibly to the treatments.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, teenagers drive themselves like crazy. Early university students, it's a real problem. High school athletes, college athletes, it's a problem. Policemen, caretakers, doctors, lawyers, professional people, self-employed, caretakers. It's all over the place.
And John, you have many who come into the clinic at Global Health Centre, don't you?
James, we're just seeing pretty much all of our cancer patients, in my opinion, have adrenal fatigue, and we're just seeing so many people. And unfortunately, like you said before, some of them are going to what they are called adrenal specialists and being given just some vitamin D. And the same we see, many people are told, well, there's nothing wrong with you. You're depressed. So, or the whole hypochondriac thing.
It's a huge issue.
Yeah, you and I have both had adrenal fatigue. Well, I've had adrenal fatigue. You had it yourself, didn't you, at one stage?
Yeah, at one point, yes.
Yeah, and it's actually very easy to treat if people do make the lifestyle modification, isn't it?
Yeah, if they take the right supplements,
yeah,
and They make the dietary supplement, the dietary changes and lifestyle changes.
James, it's not something to underestimate either, because in your book you say up to 80% of Americans could be suffering from this. That's a huge figure.
It is, and that's at some time in their life. You know, some people have adrenal fatigue for a few weeks and then they get over it. But I've had other people, I had one woman, 78 years old, that thinks that she had it from the time she was a very young child, but she still responded at 78 years old, she still responded to a typical adrenal dietary supplement protocol, the dietary changes and the lifestyle changes.
So somebody like that might, James, have had great trauma when they're little, might have had great stress, which activates that fight or flight response in the body. And that's where the adrenals really do start to work hard, isn't it?
That's right, or sometimes even within the mother that traumatizes the fetus. Yeah, so it can start fairly early. That's right.
So do you find that those sorts of traumas heal, and the calming effect of these treatments and the lifestyle changes, the better sleep, all of those sorts of results happen as a result of treating the adrenal fatigue?
Yeah, but that's interesting, because in the cases of early childhood trauma, sexual abuse, things like that, I find that it's more the hypothalamus and the hippocampus that are affected that then affect the adrenals. But it doesn't matter, because our protocol includes supplementation for the hypothalamus and hippocampus anyway. And so it's the same treatment protocol will work with all these people. But yes, there's a very little different mechanism with the younger people and with certain conditions. But then we find that they all get better using the same protocol, which is great. It's great for the doctor, because he doesn't have to think. He can just more or less say, here's a program and do it. It's going to work with about 80% of the people. And the other 20% is going to have a body burden, or there's going to be something that's going to pull down the adrenals and keep them from healing. So it's one of the most effective protocols that someone can use when someone can be profoundly ill and they can become completely recovered. And it's fairly simple, and in most cases doesn't include pharmaceuticals.
That's wonderful.
The most exciting. How much power the person has to get themselves well is the most exciting thing as far as I'm concerned.
That is a wonderful endorsement, and I'd like to add my endorsement. Your book, Adrenal Fatigue, should be in everybody's home and read by everybody, and more than that, probably read by every doctor, because it's extremely well written. Thank you so much, James Wilson. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you, James.
Gosh, hearing him say, I wish you could have been a mouse in the corner and listened to what they told me. Some of his clients have been to as many as 37 doctors. And then with a change in lifestyle and the adrenal support supplements, these people get their lives back. Hearing that from Dr. James Wilson may well help someone watching this show who suffered similar derision and dismissal, and yet you know that you need some help. That's what we want to do with this show, help anyone who wants to lift your health and well-being into new and thriving levels. I also loved it today when Vivienne Berry spoke of neuroplasticity, of the ability of our brain and heart and gut to be reprogrammed and thereby repaired, so that we can begin to convert fatigue and dis-ease into well-being and optimism. Next week, Bruce Lipton continues with his stimulating perspectives on new science, and we'll discuss ozone therapy. Humans were designed to thrive in an oxygen-rich environment. So imagine if your blood system were given so much healthy oxygen that it would have the ability to ward off illness, fatigue, and maybe even depression to supercharge emotional resilience and physical health. Until then, I wish you optimal well-being.